Track limits penalty pushes Lewis Hamilton down to P16, triggering a furious outburst at his team for not informing him. Stick around to find out every detail and what it means going forward. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking news about F1 races. It was more than just a lap. It was more than just qualifying. It was legacy. It was Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, stepping into the ring one more time, not just against the stopwatch, not just against Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc, but against time itself, against doubt, against the whispering narrative that maybe, just maybe, the best days were behind him. And yet, as he rolled out of the pit lane with one final set of soft tires, visor down, jaw clenched, the world held its breath. Because everyone watching, on track, on screens, in the garages, in living rooms around the globe, knew exactly what was about to happen. It wasn't just a driver about to push. It was Hamilton about to unleash. The first 2 laps, mere warm-ups. The first aborted due to a sluggish backmarker blocking the racing line like a moving roadblock through Sector 2. The second, better, much better, but a sudden gust at Turn 9 destabilized the rear end, forcing a quick opposite lock correction that cost tenths and flow. He aborted, shook his head, took a deep breath, and rolled back to the garage. No drama. No shouting, just pure focus. The type of stillness that comes before a storm. And then came the moment. Final run. Final shot. One lap to remind the world that greatness never fades, it just lies in wait. As he exited the pit lane, everything around him seemed to slow down. The chaos of the paddock melted away. The tension in the garage froze in place. Every Mercedes engineer had their eyes glued to the screens. Red Bull mechanics stopped mid-conversation. Ferrari's telemetry team leaned in. Everyone knew what was coming. The outlap was surgical. Gentle on the brakes. Precise on tire temp. No oversteering, no weaving. It was calm. It was calculated. And then, ignition. He floored it. The roar of the W15 echoed like thunder as he barreled down into Turn 1. Turn 1, perfect apex. Full commitment. Flat through the exit. Turn 2 into 3, precision. Controlled aggression. He wasn't just dancing on the edge. He was the edge. Sector 1, purple. Fastest of anyone. Not just fast. Dominant. The kind of purple that silences critics and sends fear across the pit lane. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking news about F1 races. Through Sector 2, the car looked alive, restless in his hands, but obedient. Turns 6 and 7 came at him like a blur, yet his line was immaculate. No overcorrection. No hesitation. He brushed the curbs like he'd built them himself. The car twitched, but he didn't flinch. The delta showed he was still gaining. Still in the fight. Sector 2, green. Still personal best. Still gaining. Delta, plus 0.193. He was nearly 2/10 up on provisional pole. The lap was gold. The dream was alive. And all the while, radio silence. Not a word. No reminders. No last-minute adjustments. Not even the faintest track limits Turn 4. Not a whisper. And in that silence, something snapped. Because this wasn't just about execution. It was about teamwork. About trust. About timing. And in the most critical seconds of his entire qualifying session, Lewis Hamilton had been left completely, devastatingly alone. Still, he didn't know it yet. He drove that final sector like a man possessed. He carved Turn 10. Smashed the traction zone out of 12. Kept it clean through 13. Launched through 14. Every micro-movement was perfection. The tires were screaming, but he didn't care. He was in the zone. Beyond the limit. Car and man fused into one unstoppable force. He crossed the line. Silence. Then the timing flashed. P3. Maybe P2 depending on Verstappen's final run. He exhaled. Voice crackling with exhaustion and belief. That's all I've got, man. And he meant it. That wasn't just a lap. That was everything. His history. His hunger. His talent. All poured into one single, breathless sequence of speed. And then, within minutes, the dagger. His name slid down the order. P4. Then P5. And finally, the dreaded asterisk. Track limits violation. Turn 4. It wasn't just a slap in the face. It was betrayal. Turn 4. The one corner he'd been wary of all weekend. The one they always warned about. A centimeter over the white line. Not a foot. Not a car's width. A centimeter. And the team? Silent. Absent. Missing. He turned to his race engineer. Calm on the outside. Storm inside. Why didn't I hear anything? The answer. A pause. A stumble. A half apology. Too late. Too vague. Too careless. Because Hamilton doesn't guess at limits. He manages them. He rides that white line like a tightrope artist, balancing speed and legality to perfection. But when the spotters fail, when the safety net vanishes, all it takes is one pixel, one flick of rubber outside the line, and everything unravels. No rage. No shouting. Just that cold, concentrated fire behind his eyes. The fire of a man who knows he delivered greatness, only for it to be erased by silence. And the world noticed. Fans went wild on social media. Pundits argued on live broadcasts. Former champions weighed in. Unacceptable, one said. He deserved better, said another. But Hamilton, he just walked back to the motorhome. Slow. Composed. Processing. Because he wasn't broken. He was focused. This wasn't the end of the fight. It was the beginning of one. Because you don't delete a Hamilton lap and expect the story to end there. You don't strip away his masterpiece and think there won't be consequences. He'd remember this. The silence. The loss. The moment. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking news about F1 races. And the next time he got behind the wheel, that fire would be back. Stronger. Hotter. And completely uncontrollable. Because the lap may be gone. But the storm it unleashed was just getting started. The sun was beginning to dip below the grandstands, casting long shadows across the circuit. The air was still charged from the electricity of qualifying, fans still on their feet, many chanting Hamilton's name with unwavering loyalty. Moments earlier, he had delivered what many were already calling the lap of the year. Purple in every sector. Precision so sharp it looked choreographed. The Ferrari danced through corners, the tires gripping like claws into the asphalt. It was vintage Lewis, no, evolved Lewis. A man not just fighting for position, but making a statement to the world, that at 40, he hadn't lost a fraction of his edge. And in red, it meant something more. It meant he was rewriting history. As he crossed the line, the Ferrari garage erupted. Engineers fist-bumped, analysts clapped, and the mechanics banged the side of the pit wall in joy. Vasseur allowed himself a rare smile. Bonington exhaled for the first time in 2 minutes. Everyone felt it. This wasn't just provisional pole. This was poetry in motion. Redemption. After all the criticism, the doubters, the endless media vultures circling above him like sharks sensing blood, Lewis had struck back with thunder. But the joy didn't last. The first clue that something was wrong came not from the FIA, but from the silence. A sudden, inexplicable hush on the intercoms. A change in body language. Heads started tilting toward the data screens, toward the race control feed. Someone noticed a small yellow banner at the bottom of the screen, track limits under review, car 44. It was so casual, so subtle, that for a second no one even reacted. But within moments, it escalated. One red flag. Then 2. Then 4. Turn 4. Turn 10. Turn 13. Turn 19. All flagged. Not by human eyes. Not by stewards. But by machines. By the laser-precise, indiscriminate digital sensors buried in the track, watching everything. And according to those sensors, Lewis had exceeded the limits on all 4. They were millimeters. But in the era of hyper-regulation, millimeters were enough to erase greatness. The final blow came seconds later, lap time deleted due to multiple track limit violations. 5-second time penalty issued for repeated infringements despite previous warnings. Time stopped. Gasps echoed inside the Ferrari garage. Mechanics froze mid-movement. Engineers blinked in disbelief. Bonington stared at the screen like it was malfunctioning. Vasseur's jaw dropped slightly as he reread the message, as if his eyes were lying to him. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Another voice muttered, "They've pushed him to P16. And then came the moment no one will ever forget. Lewis Hamilton, having just parked the car, stepped through the back entrance of the garage. His helmet was still in his hand. His visor was up. His eyes, those eyes that had seen glory, heartbreak, betrayal, and victory more than any other on the grid, were dark. Not confused. Not surprised. No. They were furious. He walked like a soldier who'd just been handed an empty rifle before a battle. Controlled. Tense. Boiling from the inside. The gloves came off. Literally. Thrown onto the counter with a force that made 2 engineers flinch. He marched into the engineering bay like a lion entering a den of sleeping hyenas. Where the fuck was the call? The garage went dead silent. Fred Vasseur turned slowly, already knowing this storm couldn't be avoided. "Lewis, we had the data." "You had the data." "You had the Fing data and you watched it happen? Turn 4. Turn 10. Turn 13. 19. 4 Fing corners and you didn't think maybe you should tell your own goddamn driver." Bonington stepped in, headset still around his neck, his voice almost pleading. "We saw the first warning after turn 4 came through, but we didn't want to overload." "Overload me?" Lewis's laugh was pure venom. "Bonno, do I look like a Fing rookie to you? You think a warning's gonna overload me? I've been racing for 20 years. You think Max doesn't get live updates? You think GP tells him to guess where the limit is? No. They communicate. They manage. They protect their driver. What the F are we doing here?" Fred tried again, his voice rising. "Lewis, we didn't want to risk distracting you during the lap." "Distracting me?" "Fred, this is Formula 1, not kindergarten. You don't protect me by staying silent. You protect me by giving me the information I need to keep the F******ing lap." An intern stepped backward as Lewis spun toward the monitor, pointing at the deleted lap data with shaking fury. "Look at this. Look at this F*****ing masterpiece. That was pole. That was dominance. I gave you everything. And because no one on this wall had the balls to say, 'Track limits, ease off, I'm starting 16th. 16th. He slammed his palm onto the desk, rattling telemetry displays and making a senior strategist nearly drop his headset. "You let them erase my lap. And now you're going to tell me we couldn't do anything." Bonington tried again, softer. "We'll take it to the stewards. Maybe argue the sensors were." "Bonno, don't. Don't insult me. You think they're gonna reverse this? You think the FIA's gonna go on live television and admit their system's flawed? That they over-penalized a 7-time champion in front of millions? No. They won't. Because they've already built the story. They've already buried me. And you," he turned to Fred again, voice like a blade, "you let it happen." Outside the garage, media cameras were already forming a wall. News crews whispered furiously into mics. TikTok clips of the FIA notice were spreading like wildfire. Fans were screaming, fighting in comment sections. "This is sabotage." He knew the limits. Ferrari failed him. Justice for Lewis. Inside, Hamilton paced. No longer shouting. Now simmering. Dangerous. "I fought for every millimeter this season. I've dragged this car out of mediocrity. I've bled for this badge. And the one moment we have to strike, you blink." No one responded. No one could. He turned toward the exit, his voice like smoke. "If you're not going to fight for me, I will." And with that, he left. Not in a hurry. Not in shame. But with the quiet fury of a man betrayed by silence, abandoned by caution, and crucified by milliseconds. A man who had delivered a lap worthy of legend, only to have it wiped clean by machines and muted headsets. And as he walked away, a message pulsed silently in the minds of every person in red. This wasn't just a penalty. This was the beginning of war. No. No, Bono. Don't give me that. Not now. You tell me about tire pressures before I even feel it in the steering. You talk me through wind shear, oversteer corrections, minute changes in grip through Beckett's. You talk to me every lap about every pebble on this track. But now, when the lap matters, when I'm risking everything for a shot at pole, that's when you disappear. His voice wasn't just anger. It was disbelief. Rage, yes, but behind that, something deeper. Betrayal. Something broke in Lewis Hamilton's voice, something raw and jagged, like steel tearing under pressure. You stayed silent. You left me blind. You left me vulnerable on the one lap where I needed you most. Don't stand there and pretend this was an accident. Inside the Ferrari garage, the entire engineering team had stopped pretending to work. Heads lifted slowly from screens, telemetry paused mid-frame. No one dared speak. No one even breathed too loudly. Fred Vasseur stepped forward, calm in appearance, but visibly stiff under the weight of what he was about to say. Lewis. It wasn't intentional. There was a delay in the data stream. We lost a few seconds syncing the GPS overlay to the pit wall telemetry. We had the warning cued. It was just late. Lewis turned, slowly, eyes like storm clouds. Late, he repeated. You're telling me I was 5 seconds behind Charles on track, and he got told? He lifted, adjusted his delta, avoided traffic and saved his lap. And I, who was directly behind, about to run straight into the McLaren in turn 13, I was told nothing. Charles was further ahead in the timing window. His call went first, Fred offered. It's how the queue system works. Don't insult me, Fred, Lewis cut in. His voice was quieter now, but more dangerous. You and I both know how this works. You prioritized him. You chose who got the lifeline. And it wasn't me. Fred flinched at the phrasing. The word, chose, hung in the air like a bomb with a lit fuse. Lewis didn't wait for confirmation. I've seen this before, he continued. I've lived through this. I know exactly what it looks like when a team starts to shift its balance. When one side of the garage starts getting the better sim runs. When upgrades show up on the other chassis first. When strategies get reshuffled mid-race for reasons no one can explain. And you always smile through it, always say it's nothing, just bad luck. But it's not. It's engineered. It's managed. It's manipulated. Fred tried to intervene again, to clarify, to stop this train from derailing, but Lewis wasn't finished. Let me guess. Charles got the newer spec rear wing 2 weeks ago for comparison testing. The one I didn't even know existed. Right. The one that shaved 2/10 off his Sector 1 entry speed in Silverstone. And here I am, running a spec that hasn't changed since Imola. Lewis, the parts rollout. Save it. Just say it. Say he's the priority. Say you've already made the decision. Say I'm the one just holding the seat until the PR machine is ready to announce his long-term deal. Nobody moved. Even the Ferrari communications officer stopped typing his email mid-word. You had one job, Lewis said, staring into Fred's eyes. Protect the lap. Give me the tools. Give me the call. And you failed. He grabbed his helmet bag with a fury that vibrated through the floor. His gloves hit the sidewall. His balaclava flew across the table. The sound of his visor snapping into the case echoed louder than any engine all day. And then he was gone. Storming out of the garage, shoulders square, head locked forward, eyes scanning the paddock with the intensity of a man who had officially declared war. The paddock didn't miss it. They never do. Red Bull engineers nudged each other. A Mercedes comms staffer openly stopped walking. A photographer nearly dropped his lens watching Lewis blaze through the narrow lane between hospitality units like a missile. And ahead, completely unaware, stood Charles Leclerc. Monegasque. Calm. Polished. Polite. Talking to a pack of Monaco-based journalists, smiling as if nothing had happened. His red suit was unzipped just enough to look effortless. His hair was still perfect. Cameras were rolling. He looked every bit the golden boy. Until Lewis walked into frame. The moment was seismic. Tension rippled like static. Every eye turned. Charles, Lewis said. Leclerc turned, his smile faltering only slightly. Hey, Lewis. That was a tough quali. You got the call, Lewis said, no emotion. Just ice. Charles blinked. What? You got the warning about the traffic. Mid-lap. You lifted before turn 12. A pause. Yeah, Charles said, hesitating. It was last minute, but I got it. I adjusted. I thought you thought wrong. The reporters shifted. The cameras adjusted focus. No one interrupted. I wasn't told, Lewis continued. I was left to run straight into a rolling roadblock while you were lifting and saving your run. And now you're in P3. I'm in P16. And don't tell me you didn't know. You felt the gap. You saw the delta. You knew I didn't get the call. I didn't, Charles said quietly. I assumed. You assumed I was still being treated like an equal, Lewis said. That's your mistake. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because it wasn't what he said, it was what he meant. And everyone heard it. Lewis walked away without waiting for a reply. And Charles just stood there, in front of the cameras, unsure whether to speak or disappear. Inside the Ferrari motorhome, Fred was already staring at comms logs. The strategy team was red-flagging every second of the Q3 call timeline. Senior engineers were pulling GPS overlays and checking if someone made a deliberate choice. And in the back of the media room, an Italian team liaison was already on the phone with Maranello HQ. But no amount of data could erase what had happened. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, global icon, relentless competitor, had just officially declared internal warfare. Not over points. Not over position. But over principle. And in Formula One, that kind of war doesn't end in the garage. It spreads. It leaks. It divides. It infects every debrief, every meeting, every setup decision. Lewis wasn't just angry. He was done playing politics. And when Lewis Hamilton stops being a team player, he becomes the most dangerous version of himself. Not because he yells. Not because he sulks. But because he starts racing against you, from within your own team. And Ferrari just made the costliest mistake in modern Formula One. They underestimated the one man who never forgets. The moment Lewis Hamilton stepped out of the cockpit, the tension around the Ferrari garage shifted like a storm cloud rolling in. There was no helmet toss, no shouting, no visible outburst. But anyone who had been in Formula One long enough knew that the most dangerous version of Lewis wasn't the one who yelled, it was the one who said nothing. The one who held it in. The one who walked silently, with his jaw clenched and his eyes cold. And today, Lewis was silent. But only until he saw Charles. Leclerc was standing just outside the engineering station, helmet tucked under his arm, chatting with his race engineer. Laughing. Relaxed. Completely unaware of the firestorm marching in his direction. He didn't see Lewis until he was only a few feet away, until the sound of his boots on the concrete made him turn. Hey. Just one word. But it hit harder than any scream could have. It froze Charles in place. Lewis, he replied, puzzled, trying to read the Brit's expression. It didn't take long. Hamilton's eyes were sharp, piercing, unforgiving. His tone was clipped. You got the warning, didn't you? Charles blinked. What are you talking about? Lewis stepped closer, voice lower but filled with a slow-burning fury. Don't play coy with me. You lifted in turn 11. Mid-lap. No traffic. No error. You don't do that unless you've been told something. Leclerc shifted his stance, caught slightly off guard but trying to stay composed. They said I was close. That's it. Just a heads up on the limit. Exactly, Lewis snapped. You got a warning. You knew. You had the chance to adjust your line, lift, avoid the penalty. Meanwhile, I'm flying blind, absolutely nailing the lap, and boom. Lap deleted. Not a word from my side of the garage. No caution. No information. Just gone. Charles exhaled through his nose, folding his arms. Look, I didn't know you weren't told. I didn't hear your radio. I was focusing on my lap. What did you expect me to do? Lewis didn't even blink. I expected some damn transparency. I expected the same basic information to be shared equally between both cars. I expected Ferrari to act like a team, not like two separate squads running two different races. Charles raised his eyebrows. Are you seriously accusing me of getting special treatment? Lewis leaned in, his voice dropping to a near whisper, which somehow made it even more threatening. I'm accusing this team of making it look like you are. And if you benefit from that, even unintentionally, you need to ask yourself why it keeps happening. Because it's not the first time, is it? That landed hard. Charles's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. You want to turn this into a war? Really? We've got enough pressure just trying to make this car work, and now you're dragging paranoia into it. Lewis laughed, but there was no humor in it. This isn't paranoia. This is pattern. This is the undercut in Monaco, the tire call in Spain, the pit release in Canada, the warning today. Every time there's a knife in my back, I turn around and find you holding the map. Charles took a step forward now, closing the distance. You think I want to win like that? You think I want advantages handed to me while you get left out to dry? That's not how I race. Then say something. Lewis snapped. If you see I'm not getting the data, speak up. Don't play innocent while you quietly cash the benefit. You want to be a champion, Charles? Champions don't just drive fast. They stand up when the game isn't fair, even when they're winning. The air between them crackled with intensity. Crew members nearby had stopped moving, pretending to work while listening in. PR managers shifted nervously. Reporters angled their cameras just enough to capture the scene without being obvious. I'm not your babysitter, Charles growled. I don't manage your engineer. If they didn't tell you, that's your problem. Lewis's eyes narrowed. No. It's our problem. Because every time something like this happens, it chips away at trust. And when trust is gone, what are we even doing here? You think we can fight Red Bull or McLaren like this? Charles said nothing. Lewis took one final step forward. I came here to build something. To win something together. But if I have to fight my teammate for basic fairness, then maybe I came to the wrong damn place. Charles looked away, then back at Lewis. His voice was softer now, but colder. Then maybe you did. That did it. Lewis turned and walked away, each step heavy with frustration. Charles stood rooted to the spot, eyes locked on the floor, his mind racing faster than any car ever could. Whatever existed between them, respect, camaraderie, partnership, was fractured now. The damage wasn't just emotional. It was political, structural, strategic. The garage would feel it. The engineers would whisper about it. The journalists would run with it. And the next time they lined up on the grid, it wouldn't be two Ferrari drivers hunting for victory. It would be a civil war in scarlet red. Exactly, Lewis Hamilton snarled, barely holding back the storm in his chest. His tone wasn't just angry, it was explosive, surgical, and unforgiving, the voice of a man who had swallowed too many betrayals too quietly, for far too long. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The words cut sharper that way. You're laser-focused on your lap. Good for you. Meanwhile, the team's entire attention is on you. Every decision, every strategic nuance, every whisper over the radio, it's always about you. So tell me, Charles, where the hell does that leave me? The 7-time world champion. The guy who gave up everything to join this team. The guy who walked away from a dynasty to believe in a dream. And now I'm the one left fumbling in dirty air while the Prince of Maranello gets the red carpet rolled out every damn weekend. Charles Leclerc stood frozen. No helmet to hide behind now. No race suit to armor him. His lips parted, but the words got caught somewhere between his heart and his throat. Lewis, that's not fair, he said, barely above a whisper, as if saying it louder would make it a lie. I didn't ask for this. I didn't pull strings. I didn't manipulate anything. I just drove. I just did the lap they told me to. That's my job. I didn't try to screw you over. Hamilton's laugh was low, bitter, like the hum of an engine right before it detonates. Yeah. You just drove. That's always the excuse, isn't it? You just followed orders. Just trusted the pit wall. Just assumed it all made sense. But here's the thing, Charles. Just driving doesn't absolve you when the system is rigged in your favor. Because let's not pretend this is a one-off. Let's not act like this is the first time the timing works perfectly for you, while I'm left fighting traffic, getting sent out at the worst possible moment, without a single heads up. Every time it's you who gets the advantage. Every damn time. Charles stepped forward, fire finally igniting behind his eyes. You think I'm your enemy, he snapped. You really think I wanted this? That I planned this? That I'm part of some grand conspiracy to undermine you? I respect you more than anyone. I've idolized you. I fought to be your teammate because I believed we could win together. And now you're accusing me of betrayal because of one qualifying run. Hamilton didn't flinch. This isn't about one lap, he growled. This is about a pattern. A pattern of silence. A pattern of benefit. A pattern of you reaping the rewards while I get the scraps. And I'm sick of pretending it's all coincidence. You know it. I know it. And somewhere deep down, even the team knows it. For a long, cold moment, neither of them spoke. The words had already hit like hammers. Charles's shoulders tensed. His fists clenched, not in anger at Lewis, but at the realization that he couldn't argue the truth. Not completely. Because deep inside, he had noticed the subtle favoritism. The early tire calls. The better track position. The invisible hand always tilting things ever so slightly in his direction. And he had stayed quiet. Lewis gave him one last look, a look that said you're better than this, but you chose not to be, and walked away. No more words. No more fight. Just footsteps, fading into the darkness of the paddock, as the sun dipped beneath the grandstands and left nothing but tension in its wake. Within minutes, the fallout detonated across the F1 world like a nuclear bomb. #JusticeForLewis trended on every platform. Twitter turned into a war zone of data analysts, ex-drivers, team insiders, and enraged fans dissecting the entire qualifying session frame by frame. YouTube exploded with side-by-side comparisons of the radio calls, telemetry overlays, pit exit timings. TikTok was flooded with dramatic edits of Hamilton storming off, music swelling under slowed footage of his silent, purposeful walk into the night. Reddit lit up with conspiracy theories. Some threads ran for pages, breaking down how the Ferrari strategy team had subtly favored Charles for months, pointing to undercuts, pit timing, even leaked snippets of radio that hadn't aired on broadcast. The media response was instant and volatile. Sky Sports broke into their usual post-qualifying programming to run a breaking paddock drama segment. Karun Chandhok looked visibly shaken. Danica Patrick tried to downplay the tension, drivers get emotional, but Nico Rosberg flat out said, "This isn't emotion. This is a fracture. A deep, team-breaking fracture." In Ferrari's garage, the mood had turned from pride to panic. Charles sat on the edge of his engineering station, still in his race suit, helmet off but still clutching his gloves like they were a lifeline. His PR manager hovered nearby, whispering something about controlling the narrative. His eyes darted around the room, desperate for stability that no longer existed. Meanwhile, Lewis was gone. No interviews. No press conference. No team debrief. Just gone. Slipped out of the paddock through a private exit, head down, AirPods in, ignoring everyone. The SUV that took him away might as well have been a hearse for Ferrari's harmony. Inside Ferrari's control center, Fred Vasseur looked like a man staring at a chessboard mid-collapse. Panic masked as professionalism. He held a closed-door meeting with strategy heads, communication officers, even legal advisors. The crisis was real, and it was immediate. The team's fragile internal balance had cracked, and everyone could feel it. The sponsors. Nervous. Shell, Ray-Ban, Santander, all of them had aligned behind the two champions, one mission branding. But now, their investments were strapped to a ticking time bomb of ego, power, and unresolved resentment. And here's the scariest part, this wasn't even race day yet. If this tension carried into Sunday, if even the hint of favoritism resurfaced, the fallout could be catastrophic. Hamilton wouldn't stay silent. Not again. Not after today. He'd already sent the message. And now the ball was in Ferrari's court. Fix it, or watch the entire campaign implode before the summer break. Because Lewis wasn't just fighting for wins anymore. He was fighting for respect, for legacy, for the truth. And if Ferrari thought he'd bend to internal politics or take another season as a number 2, they clearly hadn't been paying attention. He didn't come to Maranello to play second fiddle. He came to conquer. And now, with the world watching, with fans ready to riot and the media sharpening their knives, the stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just a story. This was war. For Lewis Hamilton, the hours before the race didn't feel like a build-up. They felt like a countdown. Not to lights out, but to a personal eruption. The walls of the motorhome didn't echo with calm preparation. They reverberated with unspoken fury. He wasn't reading data. He was absorbing betrayal. He wasn't visualizing strategy. He was replaying every cold meeting, every strategic decision that left him isolated, every time his radio calls were met with hesitation or silence. 16th on the grid wasn't a statistic. It was an insult. It was a billboard-sized reminder that his own team had started looking elsewhere. That in the cold, analytical eyes of those behind the laptops, the man who had delivered them history had become expendable. And you could feel it. Not in what was said, but in what wasn't. The garage didn't have the same energy. The briefings were shorter, colder. The attention was subtly shifted toward another driver, another future. Lewis could read it in the body language, in the way eyes darted past him, in the silence that followed the announcement of starting positions. 16th. No damage. No issue. Just a slow car. A slow strategy. On purpose. He wouldn't say. But he felt it. Deep down. A shift. A betrayal not of words, but of faith. And Lewis Hamilton doesn't drive for points when he's betrayed. He drives for blood. He doesn't think about tire degradation or sector deltas. He thinks about vengeance. He doesn't glance at the pit wall, he glares. And when he strapped himself into the car that afternoon, something shifted. He wasn't a driver anymore. He was a force. A storm disguised in a black racing suit and a helmet painted with history. And when the lights began to illuminate one by one, the entire grid may as well have been standing on a fault line, seconds away from being shattered by the earthquake he was about to unleash. Because Lewis doesn't forget. He remembers everything. Every race where he was called past his prime. Every moment he was pitted at the wrong time. Every press conference where the word retirement hung in the air like a vulture. Every social media post that placed him behind newer names, hungrier faces. He knows what they say. He hears what they whisper. And when you push him into the shadows, he doesn't shrink. He studies. He calculates. He waits. And then, when the world least expects it, he strikes. The lights went out. And from the second he released the clutch, the calm, analytical strategist that the world once saw vanished. What remained was Hamilton the hunter. Precision sharpened by rage. Patience buried beneath urgency. He didn't wait for DRS. He didn't play percentages. He lunged. He attacked. He dove down the inside like it was the final lap of a championship. And every single time he passed another car, it wasn't just a move. It was a message. It said, I built this kingdom, and you will not take it from me while I still draw breath. And the way he overtook, it wasn't desperation. It was dominance. The kind of dominance that makes other drivers think twice before defending. The kind that sends a chill down the paddock because it reminds everyone that form is temporary, but fury, true, righteous, earned fury, is timeless. While others hesitated, Hamilton committed. While others waited for opportunities, Hamilton created them. And every second, every corner, you could feel the fear returning. The fear that maybe, just maybe, the old lion isn't done. That the king still has claws. That they celebrated too early, wrote him off too soon. The paddock was quiet. Not because they weren't watching, but because they were realizing. Realizing they had tried to bury a man who had made history with both hands tied behind his back. Realizing that behind the calm interviews and diplomatic smiles was a gladiator waiting to be unleashed. Realizing that maybe, just maybe, their shiny new narratives about youth, speed, and the next era were about to be shattered by the very man they tried to leave behind. And the radio silence said it all. His engineer barely spoke. The pit wall barely breathed. Because what do you say to a man who's doing the impossible just to remind you of who he is? What do you say to a man who's single-handedly rewriting your race strategy with sheer rage? What do you say to a man whose tire management, racecraft, and raw speed have fused into something even data can't predict? Nothing. You say nothing. You watch. You hold your breath. You pray. And as the laps ticked down and the overtakes piled up, the narrative began to crack. The cameras that had shifted focus to other drivers now turned back to him. The fans who had started losing hope now stood on their feet. The commentators who had begun memorizing stats for newer names suddenly stumbled over their own words trying to describe what they were seeing. Because this wasn't a comeback. This wasn't redemption. This was resurrection. This was the ghost of dominance past returning not to haunt, but to conquer. This was Hamilton, the man they couldn't destroy, burning everything in his path. Not for points. Not for titles. But for memory. For proof. For himself. Because sometimes it's not about winning the race. Sometimes it's about reminding the world that you are still the storm that others have tried to survive. And long after the flag waved, long after the results were posted, long after the champagne sprayed on a podium that no longer held the man who once owned it, there was silence. A heavy silence. Because they all knew. Deep down. He's not done. Not even close. That fire they tried to extinguish? It just exploded. Lewis Hamilton didn't race that day. He warned them.